Hi, everybody. It's Lisa Copeland, and welcome to Big Sellers. Today, I am just beyond excited. I can't even see straight. I've been anticipating this interview for a long time, and I know many of you have.
Today, I am just beyond.
And I know many of Bob's fans have also been anticipating this interview. Today, I've got best-selling author, international speaker, and just one heck of a nice guy, Bob Burg, on the show. And I want to tell you guys a little bit about Bob, and I'm moving some of my screens around because you guys know me in full transparency. Bob's getting ready. Bob is the co-author of one of the best-selling book series, but I'm going to say movements in America, The Gogiver. Hi, Bob. How are you?
Hello, Lisa. Always great to be with you, my friend.
I hate I have to put my glasses on, but I am not going to miss one thing talking about the amazing work that you and your co-author have done. And this is what they're saying about your new book. This is what people are saying about it. They're saying this might be the most important Go-Giver book yet. And in today's polarized world, it could not be more timely. I think you need to go buy a lottery ticket, my friend.
Saying we hit the timing okay with this one?
I would say so. Anybody could read my Facebook feed and they would agree with that. The Go-Giver Influencer is a little story about a most persuasive idea. And, you know, I could talk about it, but I'm going to let you talk about it. What I want to do is I want to hit some of the highlights of it, because I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, oh my God, like how did you guys know? Like, how did you know that this was the time, this was the place, that this is the book that this country needed to potentially, you know, that we can have Thanksgiving and Christmas with our relatives and our friends? Because I think the way things are going now, it's going to be lonely for some of us, myself included.
You know, Lisa, you make a great point. More and more, it's really coming down to that. And people are not so much defending their values as much as defending their teams or their sides that they're on. And, you know, we've seen this far too often on Facebook, on Twitter, on the other social media. Someone says something, someone makes a statement, okay, about something they believe in, and someone comments and says, you and people like you are the worst people on the face of the earth. Are you trying to ruin our country? Why don't you go somewhere, you know, what have you, okay?
You've been reading my Facebook posts.
Well, just about everybody's Facebook page.
Not mine, but my page.
But
yeah.
Does anyone ever respond to that? The person who gets hurled these insults at, do they ever respond by writing back, I hadn't thought of that before. You're absolutely right. I thank you so much for pointing out the error of my ways. I am now renouncing everything I believe in, and I'm on your side.
Never.
No, of course not. So what happens is people are being belligerent. They're being insulting. They're
bullies.
They're imputing bad motives to people who simply have ideas that they disagree with. So what they're not doing is they're not influencing. They're not persuading. They're not moving people to see things a different way, or to even be open to having dialogue so that both people can learn from one another.
Wow. I mean, Bob, what you're saying is so on the money. I mean, you can't even make a statement nowadays without somebody coming up. I mean, you'll have 10 people tell you you're the greatest person in the world, and then you'll have 5 people arguing with your 10. I mean, they don't even argue with the person anymore who makes the statement. They're arguing with your 10 friends who make a statement.
Yeah, and that's what it's come down to. And it really, you know, I say, well, it has to end. It doesn't have to end. It only has to end if we want to go back to a society where we're productive and where we're getting things done and where we're able to communicate with each other in a way that we can be allies working toward a certain goal, even if we disagree with the way to get there. And here's the interesting thing, Lisa. Usually that's what it's about, because both sides, you know, Democrats and Republicans and liberals and conservatives and libertarians and independents and everything, basically people want the same thing. We want to live in a country where people are free to be able to prosper, to be able to pursue happiness as they see fit, to be able to have, you know, to be healthy and wealthy and what have you. What we disagree with, depending upon which side or team you're on, is the best way to get there. Okay.
Right.
But very, very few people, I mean, there's always the outliers, but we can't really, very few people want to hurt others and want the country to go downhill. Okay. Most people want it to be, but there's big disagreement, and for good reason, as to how to do it. Both sides are coming from two different, a wonderful book to get, by the way, if you really want to understand how the two sides in a way think, is a book called The Righteous Mind by Dr. Jonathan Haidt, spelled H-A-I-D-T. And he really goes through the mindset of, he basically breaks them up into Democrats and Republicans by and large. And I didn't agree with every single thing he wrote, but in his excellently researched book, he gives a really, I agree with about 99% of it, of why people think the way they do. And once you understand why someone thinks the way they do, now you can have more understanding, you can have more empathy. You can now ask them questions to draw out their thoughts and feelings and open them up to your thoughts and feelings. And that's what we need to do, rather than this reactionary type of, oh, you're this and that, and I can't believe it. It doesn't do any good.
It's unbelievable. So Bob, in this story, Jillian Waters and Jackson Hill are ambitious young business people in the midst of negotiating a business deal that could make or break both of their careers. They each individually encounter unlikely mentors who guide them to a radically different yet surprisingly effective ways of achieving their goals. By finding common ground where there appears to be only irreconcilable conflict. So that sounds good, but how? How do people in today's fractured world actually find common ground? I mean, it sounds to me like it's a lot easier said than done.
Well, it is easier said than done, because it's easier to just, go with what is and retain the status quo and to not make an effort. But that's why the people who do this and learn this, they're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game, both in business and in life. So we encourage people to instead learn this and learn how to go about this and be an effective communicator. In Jackson's case, and with Jillian, who's his counterpart, Jackson is a young upstart entrepreneur, and Jillian is the buyer for a very big company, a chain of pet supply stores. And each has something the other wants and needs. And you would think this would be a marriage made in heaven. And it turns out to be anything but that. In fact, every conversation they have, every meeting, they get further and further apart, and they just can't understand why. They can't understand why this person would be saying what they're saying and thinking what they're thinking. And what they both learned from their mentors, because there were 2 mentors in this story, there were 2 heroes and 2 mentors, and they learn how to communicate in such a way that they can understand and also, well, to be understood. And it comes first, Lisa, it begins with learning how to master your emotions, control your emotions. This is really where it all begins. The sages of old asked, who is a mighty person, and answered, that person who can control their own emotions and make of an enemy or potential enemy a friend. Well, this is where it begins, because it's only when we're in control of our own emotions that we're even in a position to take a potentially negative situation or person and turn it into a win for everyone involved. On the other hand, when we allow someone to push our buttons through something they say or do, and we cause ourselves to get upset or depressed or helpless or angry, which is the biggest thing, right, that people will say that happens to them. Well, now not only can we not be part of the solution, we're just as much a part of the problem as they are. So the question is, if we know this is true, and we all do, why? Why do we let ourselves fly off the handle? Why do we let ourselves get aggravated or angry and emotional? So, well, because we're human beings and we're emotional creatures. That's simply how we're built. Now, we'd like to think we're logical, and to a certain extent, of course, we are, but we're pretty emotionally driven, right? We make major decisions based on emotion, and we back up those emotional decisions with logic. We rationalize. And if you break up the word rationalize, it simply means we tell ourselves rational lies. And we do this.
Oh, I love that. Rational lies.
Yeah. And you know, and we do this to justify that decision that we know we shouldn't really have made, or we justify letting ourselves lose control when we know we really shouldn't have. So we first have to master our emotions. Now, let me qualify that statement, if I may, because I think this is very important. When we say master your emotions, we don't mean forego your emotions or deny your emotions. First, that wouldn't be logical to do. It wouldn't be logical to deny your emotions because we're human beings. But also, it's not necessary. Emotions are a wonderful part of life. They bring us joy. They make life worthwhile. That's fine. We're just saying master your emotions rather than they mastering you. Or as my great friend Dondi Scumaci, a fellow Texan of yours, she lives in San Antonio, one of my great mentors, the fantastic leadership speaker and author, lovely human being. As Dondi says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure you are driving the car.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so we keep using, Bob, I mean, we hear it all the time now, the word influence, the word influence. But, you know, tell me exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about influence. I mean, do you think the word's overused, or do you think that people don't really understand it, or people really don't understand the importance of it? I mean, tell me from your perspective, the author, influence.
Well, I think that any word that is used as much as influence is can be overused. And it tends to, as you know, as you're saying, gets kind of misunderstood. But that's okay, because the fact is it means a certain thing, and we can all have different meanings and definitions. But the one I use on a very, and this is first on a very basic level, influence can be defined as simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Now, that is the definition of influence. But as John David Mann, my awesome co-author and great friend, as we say, it's not the substance of influence or the essence of influence. The essence of influence, Lisa, I believe, is pull as opposed to push, as in how far can you push a rope? And the answer is not very far, at least not very fast or very effectively.
Right.
I mean, you never hear people say things like, wow, that Susan or that David, he is so influential. He has a lot of push with people, right? He sure is pushy, man. We will just follow him anywhere. No, he has a lot of pull, because that's what influence is. It's an attraction. Great influencers attract people to themselves, and then and only then to their ideas. And I think the greatest influencers of all, I think they understand what I believe was the foundational premise of Dale Carnegie's classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, where he wrote, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the top influencers, the most powerful influencers, are constantly asking themselves questions and checking their own motives, such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their wants, with their needs, with their desires? How does what I'm asking this other person to do, how does it align with their values? And when asking ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way to build everyone in the process, now we've come closer to earning that person's commitment rather than trying to depend on compliance, which at best is never sustainable.
Who would you say, in your personal opinion, who is one of the greatest influencers today, in today's time?
Well, I might look at someone, let's say just in this case, a woman who enters a very, very, very male-dominated field, like, I don't know, automotive sales, and doing things a certain way, not buying into the old boys' way of doing things, but doing things a certain way. She like sets records all over the world.
This is not a paid commercial, everybody. I want everybody to know that. This is just my friend being sweet right now on this show.
Anyone who can summon Mr. Ferrari, I think it was or
Mr. Marchioni.
Marchioni, whatever.
But you're right though, because he is the chairman of Ferrari. So
yeah.
You're spot on.
His private plane to come over to do an opening. That's an influential person I'm going to go with.
Well, we had to do a few things for that to happen, like break a sales record.
Break a record, right? Exactly.
Yes. Okay, so I appreciate that. So barring your friend here, who is an influencer? Like who would you say? And there's actually some, like, you know, in today's world, I mean, I look at all these people out there and I think I wouldn't follow the majority of these people to the post office. I mean, I mean, you are an expert on influence. So who is doing it right? And it doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but who is doing it right? You know?
I would say Bob Chapman, who is the CEO and chair of Barry Waymiller, which is a major mega manufacturing company. He also wrote a book called Everybody Matters. And he is a guy, Lisa, who, you know, again, you talk about, I mean, manufacturing, this is if there's anything that's a commodity-based business, right?
Yeah.
And you think there would be command and control. No, his team members, his family members, you know, they feel part of a family. And he has made that happen with tens of thousands of employees. And I'll tell you, if you'd like, I will share his epiphany with you of how that came to be. I think this is a wonderful story. Mr. Chapman started out kind of doing business like most people. It was very bottom line focused, and his company did well, but at times it didn't do well. And it was sort of, one day he's at a wedding. He's at the wedding of the daughter of one of his best friends. And at a certain point, the father of the bride, his friend, was making a toast, and he was making a toast to the son-in-law, welcoming him into the family. And he made a very nice toast. But Bob explains that he knew what the father was really thinking. What he's thinking is, young man, this is my daughter. This is the young woman who my wife and I brought up, who we nurtured, who we have prepared for this world, who we love more than life itself. Treat her right. That's what he was probably thinking. Well, Bob Chapman at that moment came to a realization, and that is this. He said, at Barry Waymiller, there are tens and tens of thousands of employees. And every single one of those tens of thousands of employees are someone's precious son or daughter. And it's our responsibility to take care of them. And from that point on, things changed. And, you know, without going through the whole story, there were times like in the financial crisis that took place and people wondered, okay, are they going to put their money where their mouth is? And they did exactly congruent with their beliefs. And not only did they weather the storm, but came back stronger than ever. And it just shows when you do things the right way, just like we were talking about once about selling cars, right? And as you said, and I don't remember exactly what it was you said, but something, and I can't remember exactly.
What you sell, it's what you stand for.
Well, I love that. That I just love. That's probably my favorite.
Good behavior is good behavior.
Good behavior is good behavior. Right.
And you're the one who told me I needed to coin it after I said it on your podcast.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Good behavior is good behavior. It's an end in of itself, but it also happens to be the most profitable way of doing business.
And you know what? I think we all sleep better at night. You know, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and I might have to write a check, but I know that the universe is going to bring it back. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Bob, I want you to take us through the 5 secrets of genuine and ultimate influence. I mean, genuine influence.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the first one is master your emotions. That's where it begins, okay? Before we can focus on others, we've still got to be able to master our own emotions, okay? The second one is to step into their shoes.
Love it.
This is simply what I call understanding the clash of belief systems, okay? We all see the world different ways. What is a belief? A belief is a subjective truth. It's the truth as one understands the truth to be, which doesn't mean it's the truth. It means it's their truth. Now, their truth, your truth, my truth, and the truth might be the same, but often it's not. Because we're all seeing the world from a whole different model, okay? Our belief system is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, cultural mores, everything that comes into our world. But our belief system is pretty set in stone by the time we're a little more than toddlers. And after that, everything that comes into it pretty much adds on to that foundational belief. So most of us grow up and live our lives controlled by what I call an unconscious operating system. We're not even aware that we have it. And yet our decisions are coming from there. We think we're choosing, but we're choosing within a very limited set, right? Well, it's the same with everyone else. They're coming from their own unconscious operating system. And as human beings, we tend to think that most people see the world the same way we do. How else could it be, right? That's why, right? That's why you hear people say things like, "Oh, nobody would like that," or "Everyone loves that." It's not necessarily true. Or, of course, "I would never treat someone that way." No, you wouldn't, because it's incongruent with your belief system, but it might not be for the other person. So any conflict with another person, 99% of the time, is the result of looking at something, the same thing, from two totally different viewpoints. Okay? And it's not that we need to understand their belief system. Okay? We can't. They don't even understand their belief system. We just need to understand that there is those two different belief systems at work. When we understand that, now we can create the context of respect and work within this in order to bring about a win-win conclusion. That's the second one. That's step into their shoes. Another thing that this was, I think, so brilliant of John, who just is such a fantastic guy. He talks about when listening, which is a big part of stepping into their beliefs, right? If we don't listen to them, we can't know what they're believing. And it's the same when someone's arguing on Facebook or Twitter about politics. Ask them a question instead of accusing them of something.
Let me ask you this. What would the question be, Bob, that we would ask?
Well, it might be, it sounds like you're very passionate about this. Now, let's use it, bringing tact in. I'm wondering how you feel that will be, productive. Okay.
You've lost your damn mind. Why are you posting this?
Exactly.
Okay.
Another way to frame the question is to say something like, Dave, like you, I want to live in a country where everyone is able to, whatever it is that the things want. I think where we probably disagree is the best way to get there. May I ask you to, cite somewhere where this has worked in a blah, 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 whatever it might be. So we're going to ask questions that get them to, but without making them defensive. We always want to do it in such a way that we're simply asking for dialogue, not trying to make them wrong. And that's key. What John said was listen, but don't just listen with the back of your neck. And I thought that was so key. And I asked him what he meant by that. And I guess this was when he was a little kid and he was taking martial arts, and his sensei had taught this to the class, that when you listen, when you pay attention not just with your ears, okay, but with your face, with your body, with your legs, with your arms, with the back of your neck. In other words, you are really placing your whole being into listening to this person. The interesting thing is you can do this in person, you can also do it online. And people know when you're doing both.
Yep. Okay.
And when we listen with the back of our neck, which has become now one of my favorite sayings, it allows us to learn, first of all. It allows us to get off our high horse and think we know everything because we're listening to the same commentators who are telling us what we already believe. Okay, instead of maybe listening. And this is, by the way, another thing. Regardless of your side of the aisle, watch and listen to the commentators who disagree with you, okay? If you're a conservative, watch MSNBC. If you're a progressive, watch Fox. and don't do this in order to look for their where they're wrong. Okay, you'll find that, because you will. That's cognitive bias. You know, anything that backs up what you already think, you're going to grasp, and anything that doesn't, you're going to ignore. That's just how our minds work. Okay, no, listen for where, not that you have to agree, but for where you can understand their point. And this is the key. Why, based on their premise, would they feel that way? See, this is key, and this is harder work than just listening to the talking points of who you already like and agree with. But if you will do these things, you're going to position yourself to be just far, far more influential. And also, if I may suggest something, when they're, let's say, for example, and someone might say, okay, Bob, that's fine, but you know what? I'm a conservative. I'm never going to persuade a liberal. Or I'm a liberal. I'm never going to persuade a conservative, because it's just too far apart. You know what? You are probably right. But here's what you will do. There are many people who are listening or watching this conversation online and offline. Okay? They are the lurkers. Those are the people who, they're probably somewhere in the middle, or they're a little bit to the left, or a little bit to the right, but they can be persuaded. And they're going to be watching and listening and reading for two things, Lisa. One, who's making the most cogent points, okay? But two, who is speaking or communicating in such a way that they are open and they are respectful and that they're kind and that they're tactful. And we need to understand that we should never confuse tact with compromise. We can always speak tactfully and respectfully to others without compromising on our values.
Now, are you going to talk about that in the book? Are you going to give people ways that they can do that?
Well, in the Gogiver Influencer, we really don't, because it's more the story of Jackson and Jillian, and we put this in a business context. In my book, Adversaries into Allies, I actually get into all of that, but that's a how-to book, and that's, you know, so that's a different thing.
I think the how-to book needs to go alongside this book.
I'll tell you that I really feel, Lisa, that when, after people read this book, I hope they read Adversaries into Allies, because I think this book, The Gogiver Influencer, is going to be sort of the why and some of the how-to. There's plenty of how-to in there. But then the Adversaries into Allies takes it just to a very, very deep level. So those were the first two laws. Shall we do another?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the next one is to set the frame. Set the frame. This is absolutely key. What is a frame? Well, a frame is the foundation from which everything else transpires. Okay, it's the premise, if you will. And when you set the proper frame, you're actually 90% of the way there to influencing and persuading. Let me give you an example of a frame. It's one of the best I ever saw. I was sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant, and there was a little boy, probably 2 years old, 2.5. He was a toddler, and he was running around the restaurant, and his parents called him back over to their table. And so he starts to walk toward them, and all of a sudden he slips. He takes a spill on the floor. Now, he didn't hurt himself, you could tell, but you could also tell he was shocked, right? He was surprised. That was not something that was supposed to happen. So immediately, what does he do? He looks at the two people in the world he trusts most, his mom and dad, and he looks at them for their the right word's not translation, but for their, you know, their explanation of what happens next, right?
Right.
In other words, what happened, but he didn't know that this was going to happen, so he's looking at them. Now, I truly believe that had they gotten panicky and upset and rushed over and, oh no, are you okay? Are you right? He would have started to cry. But
Absolutely.
no, they handled it. Right, they handled it beautifully, though. They walked over. They had a big smile on their faces. They applauded, and they laughed, and they said, "Oh, how fun! What a good trick!" And you know, and he immediately did what? He starts laughing. Right? The parents set a productive frame out of which he could operate, and that's what we can do. And we can do that at the beginning of any interpersonal transaction simply by smiling, a big inside out smile, by, you know, the way we have our body language to show that the person's welcome into the conversation, to show, and that's fine. And that's pretty simple to do, actually. But what about when someone comes to a conversation already in a negative frame?
It's just, it makes it impossible. It really is hard.
Huh?
I said, it makes it really hard to have that conversation. So I think what you're telling us is that when you get into these situations, AKA conversations, that you've got to be really intentional with your communication style and your actions, which I think that's what, you know, we're going to learn. And the big takeaway that I'm getting from you, which every time I talk to you, which is never enough, but I get to talk to you more than most people, you know, that's what I learned from you. You know, you're very intentional about what you say and how you say it. And I think it's the greatest communication skill in the world, personally.
Well,
I work on it every day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That touches my heart. Thank you. And so let's say, though, that you have to transact with someone who comes into the conversation in a very negative frame. And as you said, this can be very difficult, right? Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to reset the frame, which is something that one of the mentors, the judge, Celia Henshaw, taught her mentor, Jackson, how to do, because she did this with Jackson. Let's say you need to talk to the supervisor because the floor person, the service person, isn't able to help you. They don't have the authority to, or the desire to, or whatever. And so you nicely ask for the supervisor. Now, the person goes back. You hope they say, hey, there's a really nice person out there to see you, but let's look at what's probably going to happen, right? They're going to say there's a customer with a problem, right? So Mr. Jones, the supervisor, who has been working at his job for 10 years, hates his job, has to deal with people 10 times a day who are complainers, right? He's about to go out there, and as far as he's concerned, he's going to put his game face on. He's ready for an argument. Now, he's going to have to act nice, but he's going to be ready to quote the rule book and keep you from getting what you want, this thing you need, or what have you. So he comes out and he expects, because this is what he actually causes every time, he goes out and says, how may I help you? And the person says, well, I need this. Well, I'm sorry, you can't have it. Well, I need it. Well, the rule's set, right? And it goes like this. So he comes out that same expectation. That's his frame. Only you have a smile on your face. You begin to walk toward him, your hand outstretched, and you say, hi, Mr. Jones, Bob Burg. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to see me. I know you're very, very busy. Boom. You have now just reframed this. You've reframed it from two adversaries to two allies who are simply looking for the best outcome. You become that one customer he wants to please. He wants to make happy.
Bob, can I tell you how many times that happened to me in the automobile business? The ones that would come at me just guns a-blazing, I'd be like, oh my God. And, you know, of course, I still have to do my job, but the ones that would come to me and say, Lisa, I've got a problem, and I know that you're the one that can help me solve it. Like, but I need to fix it soon. I'd be like, okay, whatever we need to do, because you're not going to scream at me today.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. As you know, as simple as that. You know, it's interesting in the book, The Art of War, which you think, well, what does that have to do?
I love that book. I have read that book.
Yeah. Well, people who've never read it think that book is about aggressively waging war, and it's not. Okay. No. And in fact, what he said, what Sun Tzu says, is that the ultimate art of war is to subdue the enemy without ever fighting. Now, I love that, but it's not like we want to subdue anyone. We're not looking to win. We're looking for everyone to. But he also said this: the ultimate skill and knowledge is to make conflict totally unnecessary. That's what a great frame or a reframe can do, right? It makes unnecessary.
Secretary of State. That would be a good job for him.
What's that?
I said he needs to be Secretary of State.
Exactly. And so, yeah, so that's the thing. And that's what a great frame does. It makes conflict altogether unnecessary. Now, is there ever a time for conflict? Well, of course, when there's a time and place for, but it's usually unnecessary. And so we don't want to have it if it's unnecessary. And that's what a great frame will do. It creates the environment where you're able to influence and persuade without conflict even taking place. Very,
Okay, so
very powerful.
let me ask you this. So you say that there's one sentence that is guaranteed to prevent misunderstanding. That sounds way too good to be true.
Yeah, actually, it's a good question. This goes back to belief systems, understanding, right, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Let's first take an example of a misunderstanding, okay? There's a team leader. She calls her team together, team of about 3 people, right? They're working on a project within their company. She says, there's been a change, and I've been told that we have to rush this. I need your work on the project in as soon as possible. Okay, everyone says, great, fine. End of day Wednesday, she calls a team together. Only one person has their work in. She said, what's going on here? Well, here's what happened. One person on the team, as soon as possible to her, means you do it right now. The other person, the second person, came from another team where as soon as possible meant once you get your current work done, now you do this. The other person came from another company, and on that team, when they were told as soon as possible, that meant nothing. You just give it lip service, but you keep on the schedule you were on. You had 4 different people, but 3 different definitions of as soon as possible. But what if one of the team members asked a question, and it was like this, Patty, just for my own clarification, that's tact right there, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Just for my own clarification, when you say as soon as possible, is there a certain day or time you're thinking of? And then Patty, the team leader, would say, yes, end of day Wednesday, 5 o'clock. So now you've got 4 people with 1 definition of as soon as possible. You can do this for the rest of your life. Simply ask people first, never assume you know what they're thinking. Yes. And never assume they know what you're thinking, because you don't and they don't. So ask the question, Dave, just for my own clarification, or just so I don't mess this up, or however you want to do it, use an iMessage. When you say X, and then you might say, is there a certain, or is there something specific, or may I ask what and so forth. So in other words, you ask a question that gets them to define their terms. By the same token, you make sure you define your terms. The team leader should have said, I've been told it has to be done as soon as possible. And what that means, just so we're all on the same page, that means by Wednesday afternoon, end of day, 5 o'clock, we all need to have our work in. Boom.
But what I'm hearing you say, and I believe this, and I have to work on it myself, is that you have to have intentional communication. You have to be listening. You have to be an active listener to be able to use the skills that you're talking about using. You've got to be an active listener. You've got to be intentional in your thoughts and in your communication with people. So this, what you're telling us isn't for somebody who just wants to kind of slide through life and not pay attention to the details.
I agree. I think that's a great way of putting it.
It's absolutely. Okay, so, with all these vicious political debates, gun debates, political debates, whatever, what should our listeners who participate in these discussions keep in mind? Again, when you end up finding yourself in one of those big, long threads of, I just said this, and how the heck did it go all the way out to this? What is it? What do we need to keep in mind? At what point do you jump off? At what point do you just, I noticed that you're somebody who does not engage in any of this stuff. Which is very, very good of you. Sometimes I have to say something. I can't help myself.
No, Lisa, actually, I do, but I tend to pick and choose those threads. I was writing when I first started blogging, and I guess this is about 5 years ago. And you may know, I'm very much a free market capitalist, and free market being no one's forced to do business with anyone else. People do things with each other on their own volition. That's not to be confused with cronyism, where big business or special interest groups buy government favors. No, that's not free market capitalism. So I'm a big free market capitalist. And so I was writing a series of blogs on free market capitalism and comparing that to socialism. And I got a lot of very negative feedback. Got a lot of positive feedback, but a lot of negative feedback. But here's what happened. I was responding to every single person who wrote in. And most of the comments I got from people were how I so tactfully and kindly dealt. I'm not saying that to brag or, brag myself, just saying this is just what I believe that you do, that I was able to very tactfully and kindly deal with people and explain things to them in a way that was very persuasive. Now, if you go to my blog at burg.com and you go to capitalism versus socialism, and there's like something like 20 parts. I mean, I ran the gamut, okay? Not gamut. I ran the gamut of all sorts of issues. Now, again, this is, I said 5, but probably 7 or 8. Yeah, actually, it was about 8 years ago, 9 years ago that was. And so there's not a lot of it was before they kept track of how many hits on it and stuff like that. So I really have no idea. But you'll see in the comments, read the article if you want. That's fine. But what I ask people to do is, if you want to know how to engage in political conversation, read the comment threads. There were tons of them, and you'll see some really vicious ones.
Vicious.
Yeah. And you'll see how I handled them. And I would ask people utilize that as a way of doing it, because remember, other people are watching. The person who, and by the way, there's some people who actually apologized for the way they said something because of the way I responded to them. Now, most people aren't going to do that. And especially today, it's gotten so bad that a lot of times people won't. But here's what I want people to remember, and we alluded to this earlier. It's not just that person, okay? There's tons of people who are watching you. If your goal is to influence and persuade people, then you've got to know that there's a whole bunch of people somewhere in the middle whose minds are open to ideas, who may not write a word or say a word, but they're watching, and they're watching what you're saying. And when you're the one person who seems to not only know what they're talking about, by the way, this is also very important. You'll notice that many of the people with the most vitriolic, insulting comments really don't know their topic. They are repeating talking points.
Right. Operating in fear, Yeah. I mean, coming at it people from a point of fear. What I saw this weekend was, they can't take my guns. They can't take my guns. I mean, like you couldn't even have a conversation with people because, they had one thing in their mind about what this all was about this weekend with this march with these young people. And it was like, you can't take my guns, you can't take my guns. And it's like, nobody wants to take your guns. But, and again, so, I mean, I love the fact that, and I'm going to go pull that blog, because I love the fact, number one, that you took the time versus just going, this guy's an idiot. You took the time to explain to each of these people in these comments. And you're right, that would be the ultimate influencer, because are you going to turn everybody your way? No. But are you going to soften them? Maybe get them to reconsider, maybe get them to actually do the work, do the homework? Yes, possibly.
Some of them you will. But there's a whole, but some of them you will, absolutely. But there's a whole bunch of others. And, in a sense, I may have an advantage that because I'm libertarian, which means I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican,
right,
I can find places to agree with each side and places to disagree with each side. But whatever it is also gives me great practice too, because the person there's always the ones who are going to disagree, even if they agree with me in certain areas, they're going to disagree with me in certain areas. And when I get that kind of challenge, I love it because it allows me to expand my world. First, it means I need to listen to them, and I need to listen to what they're saying, because if I don't listen with the back of my neck, I'm not going to have a chance of understanding where they're coming from. And if I don't know where they're coming from, I can't possibly answer in a way that will satisfy them and or the others who are maybe thinking that way, but who are open.
And I want to ask you, so I don't want to run out of time and not be able to answer people's questions. The Gogiver Movement, you guys have started a movement. I want you to tell our audience, define what a movement is to you. Define what the Gogiver Movement is. I love that. You know that I'm writing a book. I'm building a movement, of course, in business. And I think it's the greatest way in the world to be able to do business or to be able to get an agenda passed is to build a coalition, to build a movement, to build champions, to influence. But I want to hear about the Gogiver Movement, because I think that you guys were a movement before a movement was cool.
Well, thank you. I think really you described a movement in what you said. It's bringing people with you. It's being with others. It's being part of something that's bigger than yourself. My
But
business
what was it
partner.
in your heart? Like, what was it that made you guys want to start? I mean, you're authors, so you could have just been an author, but you guys started a movement. I want to hear more about the movement.
Well, because the authorship is just one part of a thing, right? And so we wrote the book in order to kind of get that philosophy out into the world, and we continue to do interviews with it, and we continue to write about it and speak about it and so forth.
You actually live it, Bob. You live it. You walk your talk. I mean,
Thank you.
You do. And I've seen you, and I've seen how you interact with your fans and your people, and people. I mean, I have never seen someone, I see everywhere, especially on LinkedIn. I happen to see it all the time, that another person's read your book and it's been life-changing, or it's changed their business. I was at the Women in Automotive Conference, and Evelyn Chattel, amazing woman, car dealer, fantastic. She gets up on stage, and her story is just absolutely amazing. She's a Chrysler dealer. And she gets up on stage and she said, it was all because, my organization started reading these Gogiver books and this Gogiver series, and it changed the entire culture and the thought process. And that's why we're so successful. And we were in California. I was texting you, oh my God, Bob. And I was sending you screenshots. And I went up to Evelyn afterwards and I said, well, he's a very good friend of mine. And she said, oh my God. And so I see that over and over again when it comes to the Gogiver series, and I can't even imagine what this new book's going to do. I am not joking. I think that everybody in the Congress, everybody in Senate, everybody in the White House, I mean, I think this needs to be mandatory reading if you're onboarded in the United States government. We could just start there. But this is your heart. So you're not just out writing a parable, a fable, a fiction book. This is the way you operate. This is who you are.
Well, that's a great compliment. I can't tell you how much that means to me. It's really the nicest thing you could say to me. I appreciate that a lot. And, the message from the Gogiver influencer is really, what I'm looking to kind of work with, bring to the world, if you will, for the rest of my life, because I do really, really believe in the message and that it's needed. And, we're very fortunate, and my business partner, who Kathy Tate,
yes,
who's an absolutely brilliant, wonderful person who really just runs the whole company. She's the person who coordinates really that whole movement, and it's growing big. The Gogiver Ambassadors page on Facebook and all the different, all the different things. So it's really a team effort. And so we.
But I just heard you say something, Bob. I just heard you say that you want this. This is your legacy. Yes, you guys have created a movement, but I just heard you say that this is your legacy. Because you know what I say about legacy? It's not your end of life story, but it's your everyday story, and you're creating it. And this is your legacy. I mean, I think this is, people say, what is it you're going to be known for? And I think this is what you're known for. I don't think I know it. But what I started to say earlier is that I see you write back to every one of your fans. You even sent Evelyn books. I know you did. You autographed and sent books to her dealership. I mean, it's who you are. And but you take the time to influence every person, and you write back to every one of your fans. At least every post I've ever seen, I've always seen a comment from you. And I just think it's unbelievable in today's world.
Well, coming from someone for whom I have such amazing, immense respect, that that means the world to me. Thank you.
Well,
and, and I got to tell you, people like you and our friend Sherry Matthews, who's another one of my heroes, who's
right on here watching us.
Oh, is she? Okay, because I can't see.
You can't see. Of course, Sherry's sending hearts, and she's sending.
Oh, okay. I can't on mine. I can't see anybody or any of the contents. I just see your beautiful face, and that's all I see. But I will, by the way, check afterwards. And I will make sure to to acknowledge everyone. So please don't think I'm ignoring you if you're posting something. But Sherry, she's so amazing, and there's a person who had a mission based on something devastating that happened to her, and she didn't want any other woman or man to go through anything similar. So what she did is she took that and took her ingenuity her inventiveness, her entrepreneurial abilities and skills, and she brought value to the world. You know, and so you're thinking that's a movement too that she's doing. And so, you know, and what you're doing and what so many of your viewers. And so, you know, all we can do is really decide what it is that we really feel we maybe bring to the table or can bring to the world. And we go ahead and do that to the best of our ability.
So I want to ask people out there, you know, do you have any questions for Bob? I know a lot of you, Bob, your fans are all over the world. I was in the Gogiver Ambassadors and on that page, and people were like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm not gonna be able to watch it live, but I'm going to watch it. You know, one of your fans was in New Zealand. One of them was in China. I'm just like, oh my gosh, the Gogiver movement is an international movement that I believe to the bottom of my soul that this book was, it's almost like it was ordained, that it was supposed to be here, you know, at this moment in time when our country is so fractured, it is so polarized. You know, and what you're telling people and you're teaching, you're talking about in this book, you know, of course, the stories, but, you know, how do we become an influencer? And I like to say for good, you know, I mean, I'm all about rooting for people. And that's, you know, where I kind of got in a bit of a dogfight on Facebook because, you know, I don't care what you think about the kids or don't think about the kids. I think just about the fact that they showed up, you know, and that they were exercising their First Amendment right peacefully and not destroying property or anything like that. I just, you know, you just can't help but root for them. And, you know, but to this book. So I want to talk about this book. When is it going to be released? How can we get the book? I know you had a teaser, which we will add to the Facebook page, that you could actually download a couple of chapters for free.
Yeah, at thegogiver.com without the hyphen, thegogiver.com, and they'll see the graphic of the new book. It's coming out April 10th, and you can right now get to, you know, 2 of the chapters. You can get those anytime to see if you like the story first, and then if you do, you can always click through to Amazon or wherever you'd like to buy the book. When people pre-order, they receive a video that John and I did together where we discuss the books and answer some questions about it and so forth. And then John and I are also putting on we're going to have a live online event for the people who pre-order.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now how do we pre-order? I want to get mine pre-ordered too. How do we pre-order?
Just on the site, it will show you where at thegogiver.com. Click the actual graphic for the new book. It's the one on the right, and it will take you to the page where you can put your name in to read the first 2 chapters, and then if you like it, you can just order it, pre-order. And then
what is the live event that you and John David Mann will be doing?
It's an online one where we're going to have people, they can ask us anything they want,
cool.
and it will just be, you know, just for the ones that pre-ordered, just as an extra special way of saying thank you.
So, I mean, I've got this vision for you. You know me, I've always got a vision for how to go bigger and bigger and bigger. But like, have you guys thought about putting on these, like, I can just see this Gogiver influencer convention, where, I mean, people could come and, you know, work through the theories and work through and, you know, and truly learn how to become an authentic and genuine influencer. There's a lot of communicators out there, right? They can talk, they can, you know, they're salespeople, but, you know, the greatest salespeople in the world, and you and I both agree on this, is somebody who is a salesperson who can bring the buyer and the seller into mutual agreement. That's truly an influencer. And, you know, so tell me, I mean, do you have any bigger plans for this? Will you put on a conference where people could come and hear you live and, you know, and bring in John David Mann and just, you know, courses we could take? Is there anything like that going to be available?
Well, a few times a year, Kathy and I do hold what we call the Gogiver Sales Academy. Although I think we might rename it Gogiver Entrepreneur Academy, because we basically have salespeople and entrepreneurs usually. We have some corporate people, but mostly
I actually took that online course that you did, and it is absolutely amazing. In fact, I endorsed it. I don't endorse anything.
You did endorse it. Thank you. That was very, very nice. The one in person is really cool because it's 2 days. We limit it to just 10 people. So it's Kathy, it's myself, and it's 10 other people. And it's usually 10 very successful people. So there's a great mastermindy type of thing there too. But we go for 2 days, we take everyone there and we go through the 5 laws of stratospheric success and show you how to make it very congruent with your business. There's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of, and what happens is because you've got people from different businesses, you'll get ideas. Someone will be thinking something out loud, will be going through, and someone might say, someone who's in a totally different business will say, well, you know, one thing that we did that was very profitable was to blah, 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 blah. And then we thought, okay, how can we take that basic idea and apply it, and breakthroughs occur at these things? So,
oh my gosh, there's nothing better than a mastermind.
Now, Kathy and I used to hold big events every year. We held one a year, and those we did have John speaking at, of course. John also happens to be a brilliant speaker. He's known as a writer, and he's one of the most sought-after co-authors and ghostwriters now in the country. If you go into a bookstore, you'll see a whole bunch of bestsellers that were either co-authored or ghostwritten by John. Fortunately, when I met him 10 years ago, not many people knew about him. So it's, you know, nowadays, like, everybody wants this guy as his, and so forth. But yeah, he's a great speaker too. But yeah, Kathy and I do the ones, the sales academies or entrepreneur academies, and we're going to continue.
So it looks like from our feed, you can't see this, but we already have people ordering books.
Oh,
she just ordered her book, and Tiffany posted it, and so she said link to pre-order. And so when is your next Entrepreneur Academy? I'm telling you guys, this is one of the best sales courses that I've ever taken. It's fantastic, because it's about influence. It's about, you know, it isn't like, you know, the crafty way to sell. It's about, you know, bringing people into mutual agreement. That you know, because not only do you make a sale, but you make a customer for life. I mean, I don't want to sell something and never see somebody again. I want a customer for life.
Well, you're the embodiment of that, my friend. That's how you built your business, and you know, it's it's a great example for all of us. But yeah, I think that the next one is in July. I'm not sure of the date, but when you go to thegogiver.com, if you go over to where it says, it should say Gogiver Sales Academy or Work with Bob or programs or something like that, or go to gogiversalesacademy.com. And you'll find the information.
Because Tiffany's saying, she says she doesn't sell, she makes relationships. And Tiffany Simonson says that she is all in. Your wonderful partner Kathy is piping in here, and she's putting up links.
I knew it. That would figure. She's so unbelievable.
Yeah, Chad Morgan, who is so wonderful. I mean,
Chad's a great guy.
Of our show, Quick Pages. Oh my gosh, Bob, you should see his product. It's unbelievable. You know, talk about great communication. You know, to be able to shoot a video for 30 seconds, and where I just say, hey, Bob, how you doing? And send that by text.
He sent me one. Yeah, it was great.
It's great. Fantastic. But you know, but Chad's looking to build a sales team right now, and he's saying, wow, you know, he needs to be able to you know, use with his sales organization. You know, and again, I want to say out there, I'm so bad about this, but you know, I want to thank Quick Pages, because you guys are so phenomenal, and they put together the guests and the ads, and you know, but you know, it all gets down to communication. And isn't the videos are fantastic? I mean, I sit on my phone, I do a 30-second, I send it to somebody. You know, I close more deals. People actually open it. I mean, in the world of email overload, it is so nice to be able to look at a video of somebody looking you in the eyes and saying, Bob, thank you so much for doing my show today. All right, well, in wrapping up, Bob, I want to, you know, be very careful with your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say to everybody besides buy a book on April 10th?
No, I just appreciate being here. I think you're just fantastic. You know how much I just admire you, and just an honor for me to be on your Facebook Live show.
Well, I appreciate that. We're also putting this into our podcast. So this will also be on our podcast, because this is such an important interview. And I mean, I'm going to go crazy reposting this thing, because it's probably, of everybody I've interviewed, and I love every single one of them, this to me is the most important conversation going on in our country today. And this to me is probably the most important book that's being published in our country today, because, you know, I mean, it's a mess, and myself included. You know, we all have to commit to be an influencer, to be a better influencer, to look at the principles and what you talk about, and to try to frame conversations, and to try to be in other people's shoes. Otherwise, Bob, I'm scared to death what's going to happen to this country. Number one, you know, we're not going to be able to have dinner at our friends' houses or go to a cocktail party, because it's just going to turn into a war zone.
Yeah, it's not a comfortable situation, and I'd like as many people as we can to, to really join the movement, if you will, and
It
for
is a movement.
better communication, for kinder communication, but also we never want to mistake, kindness for weakness. The two have nothing to do with one another. Again, just to, we can always speak tactfully, respectfully, kindly to others without sacrificing our values in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, well, thank you again. You have my vote that this book is the most important work that's being released in this country at a very timely time, and I'm going to be promoting the heck out of it. I'm going to get right off of this and pre-order mine. And Bob, thank you so much. You're such a great friend, and you are such a great influencer, and you are going to be part of the reason that this country can come back together. I believe that to my very soul.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.